Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. The Galactic United Forces was proud of many things, but reasonable standards for military recruitment were not among them. The sprawling multi-species confederation that dominates the three spiral arms of the Andromeda Galaxy has achieved what political scientists called functional governance, while everyone else is a bureaucratic nightmare with guns. They had technologies that would have made the brightest minds on Earth 2.0 cry with envy. Ships that warp space-time like cheap plastic, weapons that could atomize moons, and medical technology that made death a lifestyle choice rather than an inevitability. But despite all their achievements, Guff never learned how to brew the perfect cup of coffee or design forms with fewer than 17 signature fields. It was into this illustrious organization that KL-456, formerly known as Lilith Stone from New Shanghai, fell without ceremony after the hasty and somewhat awkward inclusion of Earth 2.0 into galactic society. "And here's another soft-skinned primate from this backwater dirty ball," Commander Vex said, his 12 eyes blinking in succession indifferently as he surveyed the new batch of recruits. The carapace of the Nexaloid officer glistened under the harsh light of the processing center. "Tell me, a creature from Earth 2.0, do you think you can handle training on Xanadu-7? Most species require several generations of genetic improvement before they are allowed into the death worlds." CL-456 stood at attention, trying not to look at the commander's jaws, which were snapping in what she hoped was amusement, not hunger. "Yes, sir. There are several biomes on Earth 2.0 that are classified as extreme by galactic standards. I grew up in the Pacific Northeast." This caused a wave of laughter among the assembled alien recruits. It sounded like a combination of the sound of a dial-up internet connection and someone strangling someone. Commander Vex repeated the command to the universal translator, somehow conveying his withering contempt. "How delightful! I'm sure the burning beasts of Xanadu-7 will be thoroughly terrified by your experience with these bears." The transport ship on Xanadu-7 was as comfortable as one would expect from a warship designed by beings with exoskeletons and no concept of lumbar support. Lilith found herself trapped between a Valerian with 6 arms, who all seemed to need extraordinary personal space, and a gelatinous Murap, who accidentally consumed parts of her uniform when he fell asleep. "First man in your unit, huh?" The question came from behind a narrow passageway where a reptilian Draxian was cleaning his scales with a sonic trowel. "I bet you won't last even one cycle." The Draxian smiled thinly. "Is this a professional assessment or just random xenophobia?" A forked tongue stuck out, in what could have been the equivalent of a chuckle from their kind. "Neither one nor the other. These are statistics. Xanadu has a 7.97% dropout rate for species without natural armor or venom glands. You don't have that. Your skin tears when you touch a prickly plant." "We also have something called stubborn malice," Lilith replied. "She kept our species alive through ice ages, epidemics, and reality TV shows." The Draxian inclined his head. "Attention, all new recruits." The ship's AI interrupted with the enthusiasm of a tax inspector announcing an extended inspection. "We are starting the descent to the Xanadu-7 training center. Please make sure that all limbs are securely attached to the torso, and all mental barriers are at minimum capacity. Atmospheric entry can cause mild discomfort, severe discomfort, or spontaneous molecular rearrangement in susceptible species." Lilith clutched at her belt. The Murap next to her trembled alarmingly and turned an alarming shade of green. "Welcome to the next 3 years of your military career." The AI continued in a tone suggesting that he had lost the bet and received this assignment. "Try not to become part of the local food chain. Xanadu-7 was not just a world of death. This was the gold standard by which other death worlds measured their flaws. The training center was built in the least deadly area of the planet, which was like saying it was the coolest place on the surface of the sun. The air smelled of sulfur, and something resembling overripe bananas. The vegetation was of two types, carnivorous and extremely carnivorous. Even the stones seemed vaguely predatory, with crystal formations that absorbed light in a way that made Lilith's head hurt if she stared at them for too long. This is the main complex, Lieutenant Spark, a gaseous creature encased in a humanoid exosuit, intoned in a monotone. Here you will eat, train, and possibly survive. Although we ask you to get to specially designated death treatment centers if you feel that death is imminent, he added. The complex was a sprawling collection of fortified structures that looked like someone had asked a paranoid hermit crab to design a military base. Each building was domed, shielded, and equipped with what appeared to be enough weapons to overthrow a small government. Your training starts at dawn, Spark continued. His exosuit was releasing small puffs, perhaps of boredom. The local passenger cycle is 32 standard hours, so I suggest you all take a break now. Tomorrow's exercise will take you to the Forest of Sharp Leaves for basic survival training. A collective groan rose from the inhuman recruits. What is the Forest of Sharp Leaves? Lilith whispered to the Draxian, who had somehow become her primary source of information despite their mutual antipathy. This is the place, the Draxian replied, his scales paling slightly, where they separate viable recruits from future rations. Trees secrete a neurotoxin that can cause hallucinations. The Earth is home to burrowing parasites that lay eggs in your brain stem, and this whole area is the main hunting ground for the Crictians, whose pupils are narrowed to pinheads. The Crictians are such an efficient predator that they have evolved intelligence to better enjoy the terror of their prey. They can sense fear at a distance of 50 kilometers and have digestive acid strong enough to dissolve the skin of a starship. Lilith blinked. So it's basically a space honey badger? I do not know what it is, but if it haunts your nightmares, then yes. The first day of training began with an unusual violet-orange light, which was a characteristic atmospheric effect of Xanadu-7. Lilith did not sleep well, partly because of the uncomfortable cot designed for creatures with a different spine configuration. Her DNA samples were taken at the barracks every 15 minutes for security reasons. The training squad gathered at the edge of the Forest of Sharp Leaves, a grotesque panorama of vegetation that looked like the unholy spawn of a cactus and a meat grinder. The trees, if you can call them that, were tall, thin, with leaves like jagged knives, dangerously swaying despite the absence of wind. Drill instructor Gorvin, a huge armored bracken with skin like volcanic rock, paced in front of them. Today's exercise is simple, he growled, his voice sounding like tectonic plates. Hand wrestling. You will enter the forest in teams of 3. You will get the lighthouse from the central clearing. You will return with all your original body parts. Do you have any questions? The tentacle-like dragon raised an appendage. Sir, what about the shadows of death? Gorvin's face broke into what could be magnanimously called a smile. It was more like a grimace. A great question. If you are faced with a deadly situation, your options are to run, hide, or die with dignity. We don't want to use your last moments for an instructional video about what not to do. The teams were assigned seemingly randomly, but Lilith suspected that the algorithm was based on maximum biological incompatibility. She found herself paired with a Draxian named Kazitz, whose name she couldn't pronounce without dislocating her jaw, and a crystalline being named Twinkle, who communicated via light pulses and seemed constantly frustrated with organic life. Stay close, Kazitz advised as they neared the edge of the forest. A man must walk between us. You're the most vulnerable. Lilith adjusted her standard pulse rifle, which was designed for creatures with longer arms and possibly extra joints. I can take care of myself, she said. The flicker emitted a series of light pulses. When they entered the forest, the vegetation seemed to react to their presence. The leaves turned to them like curious but dangerous onlookers. The ground beneath their feet was spongy and throbbed from time to time in a way that made Lilith regret her breakfast. "We're being watched," Kazitz whispered after they had walked for about 20 minutes. "Something big is circling around us." Shimmer's crystalline body dimmed with worry. "Let's take this lighthouse," Lilith suggested, trying to ignore the tingling in her neck. The evolutionary history of Earth 2.0 had built an effective warning system into humans, and its system was screaming at full volume. A rustle in the undergrowth made all three of them freeze. Something was moving in their path, big enough to push razor-sharp plants away without getting hurt, Kazitz hissed. Lilith turned just in time to see a patch of darkness separate from the shadows under the twisted tree. Her first impression was of smooth light, absorbing scales covering a body about the size of a tiger, but shaped more like a cross between a panther and a Komodo dragon. His head was triangular, with no visible eyes, but with a row of sensory dimples pulsing with an eerie blue glow. The 6 limbs moved smoothly and gracefully, and what appeared to be retracting feathers trailed along his spine. "Don't move." Kazitz's voice was barely audible. The shadow of death turned toward them with predatory precision, nostrils flaring as it took air samples. Her head bobbed from side to side, then forward. For a long moment, she was focused on the people. Then she did something unexpected. She sat down. Commander Ziegler's eyes blinked in disbelief. "She was sitting there, sir," Lilith repeated, standing at attention in the interrogation room next to her shocked teammates. Then she followed us to the lighthouse and back to the perimeter of the complex. "She's still there, actually," said the base's xenobiologist, Dr. Quinn. A skinny creature with too many academic degrees and not enough patience. He looked at Lilith through his magnifying lenses. "Impossible." The Crixian shadows of death are the ultimate ambush predators, with documented kills of every species on this planet. They don't sit and follow unless it's part of a hunting strategy. "With all due respect," the doctor interrupted, "this specimen did this, even preventing a person from stepping on a neurotoxin site." The room exploded with multilingual exclamations of disbelief. Commander Ziegler raised his hands for silence. "Show me," he ordered, the surveillance footage from the forest. It was grainy, but clear enough to see the strange behavior of the shadow of death. After the first meeting with the team, she really followed them, maintaining a distance of about 20 meters. At one point, when Lilith almost stepped on a cluster of seemingly harmless purple mushrooms, the creature rushed forward with lightning speed, not to attack, but to block her path with its body. "Amazing," Dr. Quinn muttered, his jaw twitching with scientific excitement. "It's almost like, but no, that would be ridiculous." Well, some predatory species are known to accept potential prey animals that trigger parental instincts instead of predatory ones. But this would require significant biochemical compatibility of signals, which is almost impossible between species from different evolutionary trees, let alone from different planets. Lilith shifted uncomfortably. Could we have something in common with humans who evolved alongside predators on Earth 2.0? Dr. Quinn's appendages fluttered disdainfully. The chances of convergent biochemistry reaching a level where the top predator of Xanadu-7 recognizes human pheromones as something meaningful are astronomically low. Commander Ziegler folded his main manipulators. "And yet here we are. I want further observation. The person will continue training with enhanced monitoring. If this shadow of death continues its unusual behavior, we may have stumbled upon something militarily important." Over the next 2 weeks, Lilith found herself the unwitting star of what the Draxian recruits dubbed the experiment. Every time she ventured out of the complex, her shadow of death, now informally named the Speck, materialized from the surrounding landscape and followed her like an overprotective shadow. Dr. Quinn began to follow Lilith, albeit with less predatory grace and more intrusive scanning equipment. The xenobiologist was determined to solve the mystery of the shadow of death's behavior, the search that led to Lilith being poked, groped, and sampled in a way that made standard military medical examinations seem like spa treatments. Maybe it's the composition of your sweat, Dr. Quinn suggested, examining Lilith's sweat tube with alarming enthusiasm. Humans produce a unique cocktail of stress hormones and pheromones. It's amazing how inefficient your cooling system is. Thank you, Lilith replied, trying to focus on disassembling her pulse rifle rather than the fact that an alien scientist was sniffing her sweat with specialized sensory organs. I have requested permission to capture a sample for controlled examination, Dr. Quinn continued. Military applications can be revolutionary if we can synthesize any signal you produce. Lilith frowned. Do you want to capture? It seems dangerous. Oh, extremely. The death rate in attempts to contain the shadows of death is 98%. But science requires sacrifices, preferably not mine. Lilith muttered. A takeover attempt was planned for next week, but fate, or more precisely, a gang of interstellar pirates with poor coordination, intervened first. The attack occurred during the third shift, when most of the base was in sleep mode. A small fleet of unidentified ships jumped out of hyperspace in Xanadu-7's orbit and deployed landing craft before the planetary defense grid could fully activate. Lilith was awakened by the basic alarm. The sound was specifically designed to be universally unpleasant to all sentient species. She was reaching for her uniform when the first explosion rocked the barracks. Battle stations. Commander Ziegler's voice sounded over the comm. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. The Gamma 6 defense protocol has been activated. Gamma 6. Lilith recalled her training. In military parlance, this meant grab any weapon and try to survive. She managed to put on her boots and grab her gun before the door exploded inward, showering her with superheated metal. Through the smoke, 3 figures stepped forward in advanced protective suits. Their weapons were high-grade military disintegrators that could destroy organic matter in seconds. This is a closed military base, Lilith declared with all the authority she could muster, standing in front of them in her underwear and one boot. Hand over your weapons immediately, said the lead offender. His helmet tilted, perhaps as a sign of amusement, as he spoke. His voice came through a synthesizer, giving it an artificial, menacing quality. We're not here to fight. We're here for Dr. Quinn's research on the behavioral anomaly of the shadow of death. Lilith blinked. Corporate espionage was common, she thought. Dozens of private military contractors constantly trying to steal research for weapons development. This information was classified, hence the explosions, the intruder replied dryly. Now they could tell them where to find a xenobiology lab, or they could start cutting off limbs until someone decided to help. Before Lilith could respond, the wall of the barracks to her right simply ceased to exist. One moment she was there. The next, she was replaced by a gaping hole, through which poured the violet-orange light of Xanadu-7 dawn and the sleek, deadly shape of the excited shadow of death. The speck moved with the grace of a liquid nightmare. One moment it was at the doorway. The next it crossed the room and neutralized the 2 intruders with surgical precision. Not killing them, Lilith noted with surprise, but incapacitating them by aiming at their limbs and weapons. The third intruder managed to aim his weapon, but the speck was already moving again, a living shadow that seemed to bend the light around itself. The deadly needles extended with a sound like knives being pulled out, and it rushed at the attacker. What followed was not a fight, but a demonstration of evolutionary perfection. The speck moved at an impossible speed, avoiding the weapon, systematically dismantling the intruder's weapon and costume. In seconds, the would-be corporate spy was pinned down by 270 kilograms of the ultimate predator. His suit was in tatters, and his facial expression was visible through his shattered helmet, expressing absolute horror. The speck turned to look at Lilith, its sensory pits pulsing with an eerie blue glow. Then, in a gesture that xenobiologists across the galaxy would later analyze, it pushed the disintegrator toward her with one clawed limb. "Good boy," Lilith said uncertainly. The shadow of death made a sound somewhere between a purr and a trash shredder handling cutlery. By the time the rest of the base's security staff had mobilized, the spec had already neutralized 4 more intruders and was directing, or rather driving, Lilith to the command center, where a visibly shaken Commander Ziegler was coordinating the defense. "Rookie KL-456, the commander admitted, his usually domineering tone somewhat subdued by the presence of the shadow of death lounging casually next to Lilith. "I see you've brought reinforcements." The spec helped fend off the attackers by targeting xenobiology data, Lilith explained, trying to maintain a military formality, while Dr. Quinn, absently stroking the head of a creature that could eviscerate everyone in the room before they could blink, burst into the command center, tentacles fluttering in scientific ecstasy. "Unbelievable! The symbiotic bond has evolved into an active defense, which changes everything we knew about interspecific compatibility." The attack was repulsed within a few hours, largely due to the unexpected help of the spec. The shadow of death not only protected Lilith, but also contacted other members of her species, leading to a terrifying scenario for the remaining intruders, who were chased across the deadly landscape of Xanadu-7 by creatures evolved to kill on this world of death. After the attack, when the Guff Military Intelligence Department was interrogating the captured attackers, Lilith found herself in an awkward meeting with high-ranking officials who arrived by emergency transport as soon as news of the incident spread. "Let me figure it out," said Admiral Yorick. "A creature composed mostly of sentient gas encased in an ornate mechanical exoskeleton. A human recruit has somehow formed a bond with one of the deadliest predators on one of our deadliest training worlds. This predator not only protects me, but also, apparently, can communicate with other members of its species to coordinate defensive actions." "That's right," Commander Ziegler confirmed, his posture rigid with military precision despite the lingering shock evident in his eye movements. "The attackers were specifically hunting for data on this phenomenon." "Yes, sir. They worked for the Aurelian Corporation. According to the preliminary interrogation, they believed that the research could lead to biotechnological breakthroughs in the control of top predators for military applications." The Admiral's container suit had changed colors, which Lilith recognized as an expression of thoughtful concern. "What is your assessment of the situation, Dr. Quinn, xenobiologist?" "You're practically vibrating with excitement. After extensive research, I believe I have identified a mechanism by which human stress hormones and certain pheromones have remarkable chemical similarities to parental markers for recognizing young death shadows. In fact, this shadow of death perceives people as a very strange and helpless baby." There was a moment of silence, broken only by the soft purring of a speck that refused to leave Lilith and was currently curled up around her chair like a 300-kilogram safety blanket. "A baby," Admiral Yorick repeated flatly. "It thinks recruit CL-456 is a baby." Dr. Quinn confirmed that the biochemical signals were similar enough to trigger defensive rather than predatory instincts. "This is an astronomical coincidence of convergent evolution." Lilith cleared her throat. "With all due respect, sir, I think there might be more to it than that. The spec seems reasonable. The way the creature handed me weapons during the attack, the way it coordinated with other members of its species, I think it recognized me as an ally, not just its offspring." Admiral Yorick turned his attention to Lilith. "Are you suggesting that these creatures have a higher level of intelligence than what we have documented?" "I'm guessing that perhaps our documentation is incomplete, sir. Humans also evolved alongside predators. We've spent millions of years studying their body language and understanding their behavior. Perhaps this gives us an advantage in communicating with them that other species don't have." The Admiral was silent for a moment. "Commander Ziegler, I want a new training program to be implemented immediately. Check the compatibility between the human recruits and the local life of Xanadu-7. If this is not an isolated incident, we may face a significant tactical advantage." Yes, Admiral, and recruit CL-456. The Admiral's suit changed color to one that Lilith had never seen before. Congratulations, you've just been promoted. Become the prototype of a whole new kind of experts in the Galactic Unified Forces. Xenobiologists will want to study you and your companion thoroughly. Lilith glanced at the speck, which stared back at her, its sensory dimples glowing happily. What exactly will my position be called, sir? The Admiral's voice, coming through the vocoder, sounded like a chuckle. How about Death Shadow Trainer? 6 months later, Lilith stood at the edge of the forest of sharp leaves, watching as a new group of human recruits approached a group of young Death Shadows. Next to her, the speck became even bigger, its needles decorated with decorative guff insignia, which for some reason he had not yet torn or eaten. Remember, she shouted to the nervous recruits, they can literally sense your fear, so try to radiate confidence without aggression. Think of them as big, deadly cats with separation issues and the ability to dissolve your bones. Is she serious? One recruit whispered to another. Absolutely, replied Commander Sigvar, who had developed a restrained respect for people. Trainer KL-456 is our main expert on the integration of the shadows of death. Thanks to her work, we have successfully established a connection with 17 creatures and expanded our program to 3 other death worlds with top predators. Lilith smiled as she watched one of the shadows of death approach the recruit, who was displaying biochemical markers identified by Dr. Quinn as compatible. These creatures are still deadly. They are still perfectly developed killing machines, but they are also capable of forming complex social bonds, and they really want to accept us. Do you know what's funny? She said to the void as the speck leaned affectionately against her leg. The Galactic Council has spent centuries trying to understand these creatures, to find species worthy to join their military elite based on strength, technology, and natural defenses. Humans prove suitable because we smell like baby monsters and are too stubborn to know when we should be afraid. Throughout the cosmos, countless advanced civilizations have mastered faster than light travel, defeated diseases, and created empires spanning multiple star systems. And yet somehow they were overshadowed by naked monkeys from a remote planet who dared to evolve and smell like the offspring of top predators, forcing even seasoned space marines to check under their bunks at night, as if they could read their minds. The sound of Speck's trash shredder is akin to laughter, which Lilith has learned to interpret. It seems that the universe does have a sense of humor after all, and a joke on anyone who thought humans were helpless creatures in these relationships. After all, the question is not which species is the top predator. It's about which supreme predator managed to convince another to follow him home and fight his battles. And in this particular evolutionary race, humanity is winning by a huge margin. After the initial revelation, Lilith found herself speaking before the Galactic Security Council, an honor usually reserved for high-ranking officials and entities with more limbs than she could count. Are you suggesting that we, the esteemed Rex High Council, consisting of apparently animated crystals and concentrated contempt, believe that we should completely rebuild our entire military structure to accommodate humans and their companions? The speck that had collapsed like a monstrous nightmare carpet next to Lilith's podium raised its head at the word companion and let out a low growl, causing several council members to rush to the exits in panic. With a respectful tone, Consul Lilith replied, "The Shadow of Death integration program has increased mission success rates by 73% in high-risk environments. They are not companions, they are allies." Admiral Yorick, now Lilith's loyal ally in the military hierarchy, activated his holographic display. The statistics speak for themselves. The Death Shadow teams have surpassed ordinary units in all aspects, and even more. On Xanadu-7, we found compatible apex predators on 6 additional death worlds. The council chamber was filled with the hum of multilingual whispers. The Kevlani representative raised a tentacle. However, The cost of transporting people across the galaxy to establish contact with local predators is negligible compared to the cost of advanced weaponry that these predators make obsolete. Lilith interjected, stating that one shadow of death can replace an entire platoon of combat robots at a negligible cost of resources. The crystal structure of the Rex High Council trembled, perhaps in displeasure. The philosophical implications are disturbing. For centuries, we have evaluated the value of intelligent species based on their technological advances and cultural sophistication. Humans were allowed into the Galactic Confederation only because of their rudimentary space travel capabilities. And now you're suggesting your most distinctive feature, in my opinion, is your determination to defend your word. Your presence is irresistible to the monsters. There was silence in the room, and even a speck seemed to be waiting for your answer. You smiled, a gesture that people can interpret either as a sign of friendship or as a harbinger of aggression, a duality that has served your species well. With all due respect, Consul, I think you misunderstood a fundamental aspect of human nature. Our greatest evolutionary advantage is not our technological prowess. It's our ability to connect with other species. You put your hand on the massive head of the speck. On Earth 2.0, we tamed wolves, turning ferocious predators into loyal companions. We have established connections with cats, horses, birds, and even with the bacteria in our intestines. Our entire evolutionary path is evidence of a species that thrives not because it is the strongest, but because it is the most adaptable and cooperative. Admiral Yorick's container suit changed color, indicating the management program is just a logical extension of what people have always done. They identify the dominant species in any ecosystem and establish mutually beneficial relationships with them. The Supreme Council, composed of Rex crystals, emitted light according to a pattern that indicated deep thought. I've lived for 7 centuries, and during that time, I never thought that connecting with lower beings could be an evolutionary advantage. A moment ago, I objected about who exactly was the inferior being in a room filled with both shadows of death and bureaucrats. The Council will be in consultation, Vex said. However, I believe that we may need to rethink our understanding of humanity's role in the galactic order. When they left the hall, Admiral Yorick was swimming next to Lilith. A wonderful performance. You've come a long way from being a KL-456 recruit, Lilith said, glancing at the speck that was causing a little confusion among the Council's security staff just by being around them. We both know that. The Vakota admirals expressed their amusement. There's an old saying in military intelligence: never underestimate a species that can establish friendly relations with its prey. Lilith chuckled. On Earth 2.0, we just call it having a pet dog. Behind them, the speck caused the trash shredder to consume the cutlery again. Some things seem to transcend the limits of galaxies. The bond between a man and his large, deadly, but ultimately devoted companion is one of them. And if the rest of the galaxy has a problem with that, well, they can discuss it with the shadows of death.